I never thought I'd find myself in this situation, but here I am, writing about the unraveling of my marriage to Sarah. We had been together for 6 years and married for 3. To outsiders, we seemed like the perfect couple. We had a beautiful house in the suburbs, a golden retriever named Max, and a life that looked enviable on social media. But beneath that shiny surface, things were beginning to crack. It started with small signs. Sarah, who was always the first to text me good morning, had begun to go quiet. She'd come home late from work more often, claiming she had to meet with clients. At first, I believed her. I've always been supportive of her career as a marketing executive, encouraging her to chase her ambitions. I figured long hours were part of the grind, but the late nights began to feel off. I noticed she would come home with that extra special perfume, the one I had bought her on our anniversary, but it was mixed with something I didn't recognize. The change in her behavior became more pronounced when she started acting defensively over the tiniest things. I'd ask where she'd been, and instead of the usual light-hearted banter, I'd get cold responses. "Why do you care? You're not my dad." That stung. The banter we once shared had turned into sharp-edged exchanges. One Saturday, I decided to surprise her with a homemade dinner. I cooked her favorite dish, set the table with candles, and even bought a bottle of her favorite wine. I wanted to remind her of the good times, to rekindle that spark. But when she walked in, her expression was one of annoyance rather than joy. She looked at the table and said, "I can't eat this, I have plans." Plans. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. It was a painful reminder that my kindness was being overlooked. She brushed past me, ignoring my attempts to find out what was going on. That night, as I cleaned up the remnants of the dinner I had made for a different occasion, a sinking feeling settled in my stomach. I decided to dig deeper, to figure out just what was happening. It was a week later that I caught a break. I had stopped by her office after work, wanting to surprise her with coffee. I walked in, and there she was. Sarah was sitting at her desk, her head bent over the phone, whispering in a way that made my heart race with suspicion. I couldn't hear what she was saying, but it was the way she was smiling, the way her cheeks flushed. I stood frozen, my heart pounding as I strained to catch a word. Finally, I heard it. "I can't wait to see you tonight." The world shifted beneath me. Everything came crashing down. I slipped away before she noticed me, trying to keep my composure. My mind was racing. Who was she seeing? What did this mean? I felt the anger bubbling up, but more than that, I felt betrayed. I had been nothing but kind and supportive, and this was how she repaid me. The next few days were a whirlwind of emotions. I spent hours ruminating, replaying that moment over and over, feeling the betrayal wash over me like a cold wave. I wanted to confront her, but part of me wanted to gather more evidence. I wasn't going to let her lie to me again. I had to know for sure before I made any accusations. So I started looking through her things. It felt wrong, invasive even, but I justified it as a need for clarity. One evening while she was out, I went through her purse. That's when I found it, a crumpled receipt from a restaurant I knew she wouldn't go to by herself. It was dated the night before our anniversary, and the name on it wasn't mine. That was it. The evidence I needed to confront her. I decided to approach her that night, but I was nervous. How could I bring this up without completely losing it? My heart raced as I prepared for what was to come. There was no way to prepare for the confrontation that lay ahead. That evening, as I waited for Sarah to come home, the air felt thick with tension. I had set the scene for an explosion I hoped would bring clarity, but I was also terrified of what I might hear. When she walked through the door, she was cheerful, completely unaware of the storm brewing within me. "Hey, babe, I brought dinner," she announced, holding up a takeout bag. My stomach twisted. I was fighting an internal battle between wanting to scream and trying to keep a calm facade. "Can we talk?" I asked, my voice steady despite the chaos inside. She paused, taking off her shoes and glancing at me with a hint of confusion. "Sure, what's up?" I gestured towards the living room. "Let's sit." As we settled onto the couch, I fought to keep my voice even. "I've noticed some things lately. You've been distant, and I overheard you the other day at the office with someone." I trailed off, gauging her reaction. The smile faltered on her face, replaced by a look of annoyance. "Are you spying on me now?" she snapped, her tone defensive. "Spying? No, but I'm worried about you, Sarah. I found this." I pulled out the crumpled receipt from my pocket and held it out to her. Dinner at La Belle the night before our anniversary. Care to explain? Her face turned pale as she snatched the receipt from my hand. What this? It was a work dinner, you know how it is. My anger flared. A work dinner with whom? Because I know it wasn't with any of your colleagues. You've been lying to me, Sarah. She rolled her eyes, a common reaction of hers in arguments. You always jump to conclusions. It was just a dinner. Are you really going to throw a fit over this? I couldn't believe my ears. A fit? This is about trust. You've been acting like a completely different person. I want the truth. For a moment, I saw a flicker of realization in her eyes. Maybe she thought she could bluff her way through, but I was no longer the naive husband who trusted blindly. I need you to be honest with me. Are you seeing someone else? The silence hung heavy. It felt like an eternity before she spoke again, her voice low. No, I'm not. You're being ridiculous, and you know it. I work hard, and sometimes I have to meet clients after hours. That's all there is to it. I felt my heart sink. Her words felt like poison twisting in my gut. You're lying. I can feel it. You're not the same. You're hiding something. Her expression shifted from annoyance to something colder, almost calculating. You think you can just accuse me like this? I've done nothing wrong. Maybe if you cared more about my life instead of just your feelings, you'd understand. That hit hard. It felt like a betrayal on top of betrayal. How could she twist this around on me? My loyalty, my kindness, was it all just ammunition for her? The emotional impact was brutal. I closed my eyes, fighting the tears welling up. I felt a mix of anger, sadness, and confusion. Fine, I said, my voice shaking with rage. If you're not going to be honest with me, then I'll find out on my own. I'm not going to just sit back and let you lie to my face. She scoffed. You think you can play detective? That's pathetic. But I wasn't going to back down. That night I lay awake, consumed by the revelations. I felt like a fool for believing in the facade we built together. Every moment of kindness I had shown her felt like a weapon turned against me. In the days that followed, my mind was a storm of anger and betrayal. I decided I needed a plan, not just to confront her again, but to gather the evidence I needed to confront the reality of our broken marriage. I started tracking her movements, and it pained me to see what I had to stoop to. I was no longer the supportive husband. I was a man on a mission, ready to uncover the truth. By day, I played the role of the doting husband, while by night I became her shadow. I wanted to catch her in the act, to have undeniable proof of her deceit. It felt sickening, yet strangely empowering. I had been kind for too long, and now I was weaponizing her secrets. The emotional burden was heavy, but I was resolved. I would unearth the truth, no matter how painful it turned out to be. I had to confront the reality of our marriage, face the betrayal head-on, and take back my power. My heart was set on revenge, but not in the way one might think. I wasn't just looking to hurt her. I wanted to reclaim my dignity and find out who I was outside of this betrayal. And so I waited, watching, listening, and preparing for the next move. The days turned into a blur of tension and unease. Each day, I put on a brave face, acting as if nothing was wrong, while inside I was a storm. I watched Sarah from the sidelines, observing her every move. It was exhausting, but I was determined. I had to uncover the truth, no matter how painful it might be. One evening, I decided to follow her after work. She had mentioned a late meeting, but the way she said it left a bitter taste in my mouth. So, with a knot in my stomach, I slipped into my car and trailed her from a distance. My heart raced. I was a man on a mission, but the dread gnawed at me. What would I find? Would it be the confirmation of my worst fears? As I drove, I struggled to keep my mind focused. I passed familiar streets, my usual haunts, but everything felt foreign now. After about 15 minutes, I found myself outside a trendy bar downtown, one that was known for its lively atmosphere and crowd. Sarah parked her car and stepped out, looking radiant. She wore a form-fitting dress that accentuated her figure. I felt a pang of jealousy, but quickly pushed it aside. I parked a few blocks away, keeping my distance as I watched her walk toward the entrance. Heart pounding, I got out of the car and followed her, keeping to the shadows. Inside, the ambience was vibrant, filled with laughter and chatter. I found a quiet corner, my eyes glued to her. Then I saw him, a tall, dark-haired man with an easy smile. They greeted each other with a hug that lingered a second too long. My stomach dropped and my heart raced. The way she smiled at him was different. It wasn't the smile she gave me. It was flirtatious and warm, a smile that melted away all the tension I had seen at home. They sat at the bar, and for the next hour I watched as they shared drinks and laughter. My hands clenched into fists as I fought the urge to storm over and confront them. Instead, I stayed hidden, taking mental notes of every interaction. At one point, he leaned closer, whispering something into her ear that made her laugh. I wanted to implode. It was infuriating, yet I felt powerless. Finally, they made their way to a booth in the back. I shifted positions, straining to hear their conversation. I caught snippets of their laughter, but my focus was on the way they leaned into each other. My heart shattered further. This was the betrayal I had feared, the confirmation I had sought but dreaded at the same time. It wasn't just an emotional affair, it was a full-blown romance. After what felt like an eternity, I watched as Sarah reached over and playfully touched his arm. The sight made my blood boil. This was not just a night out. It was a rendezvous, a shared intimacy that I had been kept in the dark about. I could feel the tears welling up, but I held them back. I was furious, but I also felt a strange sense of relief. I finally had clarity. I left the bar while they were still enjoying their drinks, my mind racing with thoughts. I needed to confront her, but it had to be done carefully. I couldn't let her manipulate the situation as she had done before. I drove home in a haze, feeling torn between rage and heartbreak. When I got home, I paced the living room, replaying every detail in my mind. It was time for another confrontation, but this time I wouldn't just ask questions. I would lay everything out on the table. I was done with guessing games and half-truths. When Sarah came home later that night, I was waiting for her. She walked in, her face lighting up when she saw me, but that light faded when she noticed my expression. "Hey, what's wrong? You look serious," she said, a hint of wariness in her tone. "Sit down, Sarah, we need to talk." I gestured to the couch, my voice firm. Her demeanor shifted as she approached, the smile replaced with uncertainty. "What's going on?" I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts. "I know about the man you've been seeing. I followed you tonight. I saw everything." Her eyes widened, and for a moment I could see the panic flickering behind her facade. "You what? You followed me? That's insane, Jake." "No, what's insane is you lying to my face for weeks while I supported you. You said it was just a work dinner, but I saw you with him. I saw how you looked at each other. You can't lie your way out of this." She hesitated, and in that moment of silence I could see her scrambling. Words. "It's not what you think. We were just catching up. He was an old friend. You know how I can be with people. I'm friendly." "Friendly? You were practically all over him. I'm sorry, but that's a pathetic excuse for what you did." I snapped back, my voice rising. "You think I'm going to just sit here and accept your lies?" Her expression hardened. "You're twisting this into something it's not. Maybe if you had been more attentive, I wouldn't have felt the need to find that attention elsewhere." Her words hit me like a slap in the face. "So this is my fault now? You can't be serious." I felt a mix of anger and hurt swell within me. "Look, we've been distant for a while," she said, her tone defensive. "I've been stressed about work, and well, you haven't been the husband I need either." The emotional toll of her accusations left me reeling. "So you decided to cheat? That's your solution? How is that even remotely justified?" My heart was heavy with betrayal, and as I stared at her, I realized this wasn't just about fair anymore. It was about the years I had invested in a relationship that was crumbling before my eyes. I felt overwhelmed, but I wouldn't let her see that. I took a step back, determined to reclaim my power. "You can lie all you want, but this ends now. I deserve better than to be the last to know about your affair. I won't be your fool any longer." Her expression shifted to one of frustration, but I was resolute. I wasn't going to let her manipulate this situation any longer. I had caught her, and now I needed to think about what came next. The emotional impact of this confrontation weighed heavily on me, but I was done being a victim. I was ready for the next steps, and they wouldn't be easy, but I had to take control of my life. The decision weighed heavily on my heart, but I was determined to confront the reality of my marriage. I was ready for revenge, but not in the way she might have expected. I wanted to reclaim my dignity, my power, and my life. The time for games was over. Now it was about standing up for myself and what I deserved. After that explosive confrontation, I felt a mixture of adrenaline and despair. Sarah had left the room in a huff, claiming I was being unreasonable, but I could see the fear in her eyes. I had caught her off guard, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a flicker of control. I knew the coming days would be hard, but I also knew I had to take decisive action. I spent the next couple of nights grappling with my emotions. I couldn't sleep, my mind racing with thoughts of betrayal and anger. I replayed the confrontation over and over, analyzing every word and glance. I was angry at Sarah, but I was also angry at myself. How had I let it get this far? I had ignored the signs, thinking my kindness would fix everything, but it hadn't. That weekend, I made a choice. I wasn't going to just wallow in heartbreak. I was going to turn this situation around. I started documenting everything, every lie, every late night, and every suspicious text message I could find on her phone. It felt empowering to gather evidence, to create a narrative that would hold her accountable. I also reached out to a close friend, Mike, who had been through a similar situation. I needed someone to confide in, someone who understood the emotional turmoil I was going through. Over beers at our favorite bar, I laid it all out for him: the infidelity, the lies, and the emotional impact of Sarah's betrayal. "Dude, I'm sorry you're going through this," Mike said, his expression sympathetic. "I get it. It's hard to believe someone you love could hurt you like that. But you've got to think about what you want moving forward." "I don't know, man," I admitted, swirling my drink. "Part of me wants to confront her again, but what's the point? She's only going to spin it into more lies." "You've got to do what's best for you," Mike replied. "If that means ending it, then so be it. You deserve someone who respects you, not someone who treats your kindness like a doormat." His words resonated. I didn't want to be a victim in my own life. I wanted to reclaim my power and have a say in my future. After our talk, I felt more at ease. I began to formulate a plan, not just for my confrontation with Sarah, but for my own healing. I started researching ways to file for divorce, knowing that it might be my next step. Back home, I prepared for the inevitable conversation with Sarah. I decided to confront her one last time, but this time I would be armed with facts and clarity. I wanted her to understand the consequences of her actions. When she walked in that evening, I could tell she was still on edge from our last encounter. I took a deep breath, ready to present my case. "We need to talk," I said firmly, gesturing for her to sit down. "Not this again," she replied, crossing her arms defensively. "No, this is different," I insisted. "I've had time to think, and I've done my homework. I know about your affair. I know you're seeing someone else, and I want to know how you plan to make this right." Her expression shifted from annoyance to disbelief. "You're still stuck on that? It was a mistake. I told you, a mistake." I interrupted, feeling the anger rise. "This isn't just a mistake, Sarah. I've seen how you act around him. This is a choice you made. You've betrayed my trust, and I'm not going to let this go without consequences." She opened her mouth to protest, but I held up my hand to stop her. "No more excuses. I want you to be honest with me. Are you planning to end things with him? Because if not, I can't stay in this marriage." For a moment, her composure faltered, and I could see the panic creeping back into her eyes. I I didn't think you'd actually go through with it," she stammered. "I thought we could work on things." "Work on things by lying to me?" I snapped. "You've already made your choice, and now I have to make mine. If you want to salvage this, you need to cut ties with him completely. No more late meetings, no more texting. It's time to start being honest." The silence hung heavy between us, and I could see the gears turning in her mind. "You're being unreasonable," she said, her voice shaky. "I can't just cut him out of my life. We have a history." "Then I guess I can't be part of yours anymore," I replied coldly. "If this is who you've chosen to be, I can't be married to you. I'm done being the man who's left in the dark while you play games." The emotional weight of my words settled heavily in the air. I had reached my breaking point, and I felt a strange sense of liberation. I had finally taken a stand for myself, and it felt both daunting and freeing. "What are you saying?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I'm saying I'm ready to file for divorce if you don't end things with him. I can't keep doing this dance. I deserve better than being second to someone else." Her face paled as she absorbed my words. I could see the realization crashing over her like a wave. For the first time, I felt a glimmer of hope. Perhaps I could reclaim my dignity and my life after all. The next few days were filled with uncertainty. I continued to gather evidence, and I started to consult with a lawyer to understand my options. I was no longer just reacting to her actions. I was taking control of my own narrative. As I prepared for the next steps, I realized that this wasn't just about revenge. It was a chance for me to rediscover myself, to understand what I truly wanted in life. I didn't deserve to be treated as an option, and I finally felt ready to reclaim my power. With every decision I made, I felt stronger. I knew the journey ahead would be difficult, but I was determined to face it head-on. The emotional impact of this experience would shape me, but I was ready to embrace it and move forward. It was time for a new chapter, one where I was in control of my destiny. The days following my confrontation with Sarah were a whirlwind of emotions, a mix of dread and determination. I felt as if I were walking a tightrope, balancing between the desire to hold on to what remained of my marriage and the need to escape the pain of betrayal. I had made it clear that I was ready to file for divorce, and I was prepared to follow through if needed. In the days that followed, Sarah attempted to maintain a facade of normalcy, but I could see the cracks forming. She was on edge, and the tension in the house was palpable. I could sense her trying to play the part of a devoted wife, but the reality was that I had seen her true colors and I couldn't unsee them. At night, Sarah would try to engage me in conversations, but they felt forced. "So, how was your day?" she asked, her voice tinged with an air of desperation. I could tell she was trying to avoid the elephant in the room, but I wasn't going to let it slide. I needed to confront the reality of our situation, not ignore it. One evening, I returned home to find her sitting at the kitchen table, a glass of wine in hand. She looked at me, her expression a mix of hope and fear. "Can we talk?" I sighed, knowing this conversation was inevitable. "Go ahead," I said, my tone neutral. "I've been thinking," she began hesitantly. "Maybe we can go to counseling. I mean, we've been through so much together. I want to try and make this work." "Counseling?" I scoffed, feeling the anger bubble back. You want to fix things after everything you've done. How can I trust you again?" "Jake, please," she said, her voice rising in desperation. "I made a mistake. It doesn't mean I don't love you. I just got caught up in everything and I didn't know how to handle it." "Caught up in what? A fling with some guy? If you loved me, you wouldn't have put yourself in that position." I couldn't contain the frustration anymore. "You had the choice to be honest with me, and you chose to lie. That's not something I can just overlook." Tears welled in her eyes. "I didn't mean for it to happen. It was a moment of weakness and I regret it every day. I want to fix this. I want us to be happy again." I shook my head, feeling the weight of my decisions bearing down on me. "I don't know if we can go back to how things were. Trust is broken, Sarah. You can't just erase the hurt with a few apologies and a promise to go to counseling." She looked at me, genuinely pleading. "I'll do anything. I'll cut off all contact with him. Just give me a chance to prove it to you." Her words hung in the air, and for a moment I felt a flicker of hope, but then I reminded myself of everything I had witnessed. "What's to stop you from doing it again?" I asked, my voice steady but my heart racing. "You can't expect me to just believe you without any actions to back it up. It's not that simple." She looked deflated, her shoulders slumping. "I get it. I know I've hurt you, but I'm willing to fight for us. Can't you give me that chance?" I took a deep breath. I wanted to believe her, but every fiber of my being screamed at me to protect myself. "I want to believe you, but I need to see real change. If we're going to try counseling, I need to know you're genuinely committed to cutting ties and doing the work." She nodded slowly, her expression shifting from desperation to determination. "I will. I promise. I'll end things with him today." That moment felt like a turning point, but I wasn't naive. I was guarded, watching her every move. I didn't want to fall for empty promises again, but a part of me still longed for the relationship we once had. I knew healing wouldn't be easy, but I was willing to try if she was genuinely willing to put in the effort. Over the next few days, Sarah did seem more attentive. She texted me throughout the day, asking about my schedule and what I wanted for dinner. It felt strange, and I couldn't help but wonder if it was all an act. I found myself constantly on edge, waiting for the other shoe to drop. One evening, I decided to test the waters. I casually mentioned that I had a friend who could use help with a project and I was considering getting together with him to brainstorm. Her reaction was immediate. She seemed tense, almost threatened. "I don't think that's a good idea," she said, her voice almost too firm. "You shouldn't be hanging out with anyone else right now." "Why not?" I replied, my tone sharp. "You think I'm just supposed to sit around waiting for you to fix your mistakes? I'm allowed to have my own life too." Her eyes narrowed. "You don't need to make this harder than it already is, Jake. Just focus on us for now." That brief exchange left me shaken. I realized that, while she claimed to want change, she was still trying to control the narrative. I felt a surge of anger, mixed with the realization that I needed to take my own advice. I had to focus on what was best for me, not just what she wanted. I decided to reach out to my lawyer again, discussing the steps for a potential divorce. I knew I needed a backup plan, one that would protect my interests if Sarah's promises fell through. I was ready for any outcome. As I prepared to face the next chapter in my life, I felt a mixture of fear and excitement. I was reclaiming my power, determined not to be a victim of someone else's choices. I didn't want to rush into any decisions, but I was ready to stand my ground, no matter where that led me. The emotional impact of the past weeks had reshaped me, and I could feel the strength rising within. I wasn't going to let Sarah's infidelity define me, whether it meant fighting for my marriage or walking away. I was finally prepared to do what was necessary for my own happiness. The journey ahead would be challenging, but I was ready to confront the truth, whatever it may be. The days turned into weeks, and as I moved through the motions of our new normal with Sarah, I felt like I was living in a limbo, a place suspended between hope and despair. We began attending counseling sessions, and while I hoped they would help us mend our broken relationship, I also felt an underlying tension. There was an unspoken understanding that this was a fragile moment in our lives. In our sessions, Sarah would often speak about her feelings of being overwhelmed and how she had sought out attention elsewhere. I listened intently, but I also pushed back, reminding her that the consequences of her actions couldn't be ignored. The therapist, a calm, middle-aged woman, often guided our discussions, helping us untangle the web of emotions that had built up over the years. But as we delved deeper, I realized something important. I was starting to see Sarah in a different light. It wasn't just about the betrayal, it was about the person I had married and how she had changed over time. I was learning to recognize the red flags I had overlooked, and it became clear that we were both responsible for the state of our marriage. One evening, after a particularly intense session, I returned home feeling drained but enlightened. Sarah was waiting for me, her eyes filled with a mixture of hope and apprehension. "How do you think it went?" she asked hesitantly. "It was a lot to unpack," I replied, trying to choose my words carefully. "But I think we need to focus on being honest with each other. If we're going to move forward, we can't keep hiding from the truth." She nodded, her expression serious. "I want to be better for us. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make this work." In that moment, I saw a glimpse of the woman I had fallen in love with long ago. It made me hesitate, torn between my desire for reconciliation and the lingering doubts that still haunted me. "I want to believe you, but trust takes time to rebuild. I need to see consistent change." Over the next few weeks, we both made an effort to reconnect. We tried to rediscover each other, going on dates and spending quality time together. But in the back of my mind, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was merely waiting for the other shoe to drop. I was hyper-aware of every late night, every text message that seemed to go unanswered. Then, one evening, as I was cleaning up after dinner, I stumbled across Sarah's phone on the counter. Buzzed with a notification, and curiosity got the better of me. I picked it up, scanning the screen, only to see a message from the man she had been seeing. My heart sank. Before I could process the emotions flooding through me, Sarah walked into the room. "What are you doing with my phone?" she demanded, her voice sharp with accusation. I took a deep breath, my heart racing. I saw the message. "Are you still in contact with him?" Her face paled, and I could see the panic wash over her. "It's just a text." "I told you I'm trying to cut ties. That doesn't mean I still have feelings for him." But it does mean you're not taking this seriously, I said, my voice trembling with anger. You think I'm going to stand by and watch you play both sides? I've already been through enough. Her facade crumbled as she struggled to find her words. Jake, please, it's just a mistake. I didn't mean to look at it. I swear I'm trying to do better. I felt a deep sense of betrayal wash over me again. How can I trust you? I thought we were working on this, but it seems like you're still not ready to commit fully. Her eyes filled with tears, and for a moment I felt a pang of sympathy, but then I remembered the countless lies and betrayals. I can't do this anymore, Sarah, I said, my voice steady but heavy. If you can't cut him out of your life completely, then I have to consider my own happiness. The emotional impact of my words hung in the air like a thick fog. I had reached my limit, and I needed to take a stand for my own well-being. I couldn't keep fighting for something that felt increasingly like a lost cause. The next few days were tense as we navigated the fallout from that confrontation. I spent time reflecting on what I truly wanted, and in the quiet moments I realized I was ready to move on. I didn't want to drag this out any longer. I reached out to my lawyer again, this time with a sense of finality. I wanted to file for divorce. I needed to reclaim my life and my happiness. The decision felt both terrifying and liberating. When I finally sat down with Sarah to tell her, it felt like the weight of the world had lifted off my shoulders. I can't keep doing this, I told her, looking directly into her eyes. I'm filing for divorce. I need to take care of myself. Her reaction was a mix of shock and despair. Jake, please don't do this. We can fix it. But I was resolute. I've tried, Sarah. I wanted to believe in us, but I can't keep holding on to something that's already broken. The aftermath was painful, and the following weeks were filled with tears, anger, and the heart-wrenching process of separating our lives. But amid the chaos, I found a sense of clarity. I was reclaiming my life, one step at a time. As I moved forward, I learned valuable lessons about trust, love, and self-worth. I realized that kindness should never be weaponized against you, and that standing up for myself was not just a necessity, it was an act of self-love. In time, I began to rebuild my life. I focused on my passions, rekindled friendships that had faded, and began to explore who I was outside of my marriage. It wasn't easy, and there were moments of sadness, but I knew I was on the right path. Looking back, the experience was transformative. I had faced the darkest parts of my life, and though it hurt, I emerged stronger and more resilient. I learned that I deserved love and respect, and I was no longer willing to settle for anything less. As I reflected on my journey, I found solace in the knowledge that sometimes closing a chapter is the best way to open a new one. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, I was excited for what it might hold.